All right, Andrew East with the ESUCC, and I'm back with Annette Weissy for part 3 of our video series here on norms, procedures, and routines. And so, Annette, thank you so much for your leadership and your time, as it's really been great getting a chance to learn in those first 2 videos about norms. So go back and check out. There's one on establishing norms, another one on maintaining those over time. Great strategy in that video. And this one is going to focus in more on those procedures and routines. And so I'll go ahead and bring up kind of our visual here. And Annette, thank you for your leadership with this.
You bet. So when it comes to moving into online learning, the procedures and expectations that you have, those routines that you have with kids, some of them can stay the same. Some of them aren't going to change. Some of them you're going to have to think about, how does that look differently? And it can be done. You just have to think about it. And I really think there's kind of 3 bucket lists to look at when you're thinking about procedures and expectations, or procedures and routines. And the first one within online learning is plan for consistency. I think sometimes when we get into online learning, we forget that we're in a classroom still. Right. Now something about being online in a Zoom meeting, things can get more casual rather than the way they are in a classroom. So make sure you're planning for consistency with kids. That many kids require that consistency, those routines and procedures, just to be able to function well. So have a schedule set, and probably your schedule isn't something that's going to change that much from what it is in your physical classroom. But think about things like, you now have your kids sitting, not that they don't sit in your classroom, but you have opportunities in between classes where they're getting up and maybe they're moving to a different location in the classroom, or a different room. If you're at a high school level, they're going to a different teacher. Or you have things that just allow for movement within your regular classroom that maybe within Zoom, you don't have that the same. So think about that and actually build in times where kids can move, especially if they're young children. They've got to get up and move once in a while. So maybe it's just a get up and shake the sillies out type of thing. But plan for those things. Think about, what am I going to miss now that I'm online that I have in my classroom? And see if it's important. And if it is, how do you fit that into your schedule and actually work out that schedule so it exists there? Where you can, have videos available. So if you're using Seesaw, or you're using some kind of online resource for kids, if you have a video, you're going to have to teach them how to use that tool to begin with. But if you have a video that exists as well, that also goes through the instruction on how to use it, that's helpful for kids. And more importantly, for elementary kids, it's helpful for those parents that are trying to help their kids through their work as well. So any kind of videos are really, really helpful. And that doesn't mean that you have to create all of them. So if you want a video on Seesaw, and there are 6 teachers in your building that are using Seesaw, only one of you needs to make that video, then share it. So
I'll interject too and say that our site on some of those earlier pages has tried to capture a student or parent facing video for onboarding. It might not get to the directions of certain things for your classroom, but the concept's the same. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think those are critical pieces.
Yep. Yeah. And when we're live in a classroom, oftentimes we use lots of different platforms, lots of different online tools with kids. But when they're home and you're not there to help them with that, and they may have parents that may or may not be able to help them with the technology side of things, it's better to stick to just a small handful of platforms that they're going to use. So maybe it's Seesaw and Edmodo or whatever, but stick to just a couple of them. That way they get really good at those, and parents are able to help then as well. So that second bucket that I think about when I'm looking at procedures and routines is be prepared for the unexpected. So we all know with technology, it's great when it's working. When it doesn't work, not so great anymore. So if there's a fiber cut or there's a storm. We're coming into winter months. We could have an ice storm and kids could lose connection. What's plan B so that their learning continues? And maybe it's just something on a Google Doc. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Maybe it's a quick video. Whatever that is that works for you, but have a plan B in place in case the technology isn't working. And also, we know from round one of being in an online environment this last March, sometimes there were things that happened with not necessarily the technology tools, but the people within the environments. We had that whole issue with Zoom bombers that were coming into, that was more school board meetings and things like that. But you need to be able to mitigate that if something like that happens for you. So know those Zoom tools. Zoom has done a great job of making those tools easy to find on the toolbar right within the Zoom window. So know what tools exist. So if you have someone joining your class that doesn't belong in your class, how can you, as the moderator, remove them from the class? If someone's putting something up, they're annotating something on the screen, how can you stop that? So know your Zoom tools, because there's a lot of things there that will help you take care of unexpected things that happen. And then that third bucket is set the expectations for participation. This kind of goes back to, the norms and things look different in that online environment. So how do they look different? So if they want to answer a question in the physical classroom, they already know how to do that. They can raise their hand or, however that works in your classroom. But now that you're in this online environment, how can they do that? Are they using the hand raise tool? And again, if they're going to use that in Zoom, you have to teach them how. Or are they going to put their interaction in chat? Or what are they going to do? How do you want them to do that in your particular classroom? So talking to them about that, and then teaching them the Zoom tools that they're going to need, because there are some good things like the hand raising tool or the reactions that they can use to help participate and get their voice in the room. So teach them those Zoom tools that you want them to use. If you're going to do the checkup on the norms, you're going to need to teach them how to use that stamp tool through the annotation. So teach them that. Spend a little time and do that. And then also, even though we're in online classrooms and you may have a parent in the background sitting there and you might think they're listening in and know what's going on, but oftentimes, I know as a parent myself, sometimes I'm sitting in the vicinity, but I'm doing my own work and I'm really not paying attention to what my kids were doing on Zoom at all. So keep those open lines of communication going with parents. We can prevent so many issues by just communicating well. So still continuing to give those parents a call, for things that need to be worked on with their child, but also for celebrations, things that went really well with their child. Keep those pathways open for them, and it'll go a lot better for you.
Gosh, and I love the attention to all the details across all of these, because I think they're all really important to follow. And those last three in particular, bullet points underneath set expectation for participation, there are pages on the site that correspond with each of those. And so we have a communication page, we have engagement strategies is where I would point to for the teach and use some Zoom tools. And then we also have some ideas for how to get our learners engaged where they're participating. So those are great suggestions, certainly things to be intentional about in your preparation. And thank you so much for advocating for this work and sharing on this idea of everything from norms in the previous two videos to procedures and routines, expectations here as well in this one. So thank you so much, Annette, for your time.
You're welcome.